Welcome to another edition of the Prep Red Zone Coaches Corner. I'm your host, Michael Knight, the director of Prep Red Zone Oklahoma, and joining us today is the new head coach of the Fort Gibson Tigers, Ryan Nolan. As you see, he's still currently at Jinx. He was an assistant coach for the Jinx Trojans, wrapping up his tenure there. And Coach joining us here today to talk a little bit about himself and Fort Gibson football. And Coach, we'll start right there, talking about Ryan Nolan. Give us a little bit about your background. I know you're currently at Jinx. How long have you been there? What are some of the stops before that? And let's just get to know Ryan Nolan.
Okay, so I've had a pretty big journey to get here, even though I've had a decently short career. But when I was in college, I played college football at Northeastern and UCO. And whenever I decided to stop playing, I had a year left of school to graduate. So I started coaching at Keys High School, which is where I graduated under Gary Willis. He's now the head coach at Vian, and he did so much for my life and fed into my life so much that he gave me my first opportunity to coach, and it was a great experience. And then when I graduated, I got a job at Sand Springs under Dustin Kennard, and he hired me straight out of college and spent a year there. We made the semifinals. It was the first year of the 6A split, and I learned a ton about being a coach, and then got a job at Union as the assistant wide receiver coach. Spent a year at Union, planning on staying for a long time, but the offensive coordinator job at Broken Arrow came open, and I was able to get that. So I was an offensive coordinator at Broken Arrow at 25 years old, and we went 6-5, and when you go 6-5, changes get made. So I moved on to Bartlesville and spent a year as the offensive coordinator at Bartlesville, and then got hired at Sapulpa. Spent 3 years at Sapulpa as the offensive coordinator. Had some great years under Coach Borgstadt, and I owe him a whole lot. And after that, I got lucky. I got hooked up with Adam Gaylor, and a defensive job opened at Jinx, and him and Coach Riggs hired me. And I've learned so much football as far as coaching defense and what it means to be a professional, and just how to build a culture that they have at Jinx.
You mentioned, all the different stops, and, it's, with the exception of Owasso and Bixby, you've hit the big five in the Tulsa area: Jinx, Broken Arrow, Union. How have those stops, and even some of the others, Sapulpa, and the different coaches that you worked with and worked for? You mentioned Gary Willis, one of the better coaches in Class 2A now with Vian, Coach Borgstadt now at Edison, I believe. And then,
Yes.
some of the guys that you worked with at Union, BA, Jinx. How has that helped you and kind of molded you into the coach that you are today?
Man, I've been so blessed to be under some great coaches. Like I still, Coach Willis coached me in high school, and I still talk to him weekly, and he feeds into my life. And, he was part of the reason I became a football coach in the first place. Yeah, I love the game, but just seeing the relationship I had with Coach Willis is what changed my life dramatically. And I want to do that for students. And so I was able to have a good one right off the bat. And then, I learned so much from every stop that I was at. I tried to take the good, learn from the good and the bad, because not that there's bad everywhere, but, what would you take? And I was able to be under some great Christian guys that really fed into me and helped me grow up and become a man, and fed into my family. And so like Coach Fred, he was awesome at Union. Coach Alexander was great to me. Coach Borgstadt, again, he's a huge part of my life. Me and him still talk weekly as well. And Coach Riggs is really, I felt, the way that he set the culture and runs the program at Jinx is just, I'm not sure that anybody could do the job that he's done following Alan Trimble, like a legend in himself. And the way that he's made it his own program, but he still honors Alan Trimble and does the things that he did to build the culture. Coach Riggs has been unbelievable, and I've learned so much as far as to be a head coach and how to treat people from Coach Riggs.
You're now the head coach of the Fort Gibson Tigers, and we talk about all the stops that you've had along the way over the last near decade of your coaching career, and what you can take from those different guys. At what point, whether it was this off season or even an off season prior, where you knew that you were ready to kind of branch out and become a head coach and start your own coaching tree? I mean, the guys that you worked for, they have some pretty impressive coaching trees, the guys that they've worked with and have worked under them and have gone on to become head coaches themselves. When did you know that you were ready to take over and lead a program?
It's always been a goal of mine to be the head football coach, and I've worked really hard schematically to learn the scheme of the game, and then I learned really hard to see what people that have been way more successful than I am have done. And so I don't know if there's a time that it just flipped the switch, but I've got a couple mentors in my life, Coach Riggs, and then, like I said, Steve Neal at Deer Creek's a mentor of mine as well, and Coach Willis. And it was just, I felt learning from them and seeing, what they do and how they've ran programs. They've all three have ran successful programs. And I planned on being at Jinx for a long, long time. The only job that I've ever had my eye on really was Fort Gibson, because it's 20 minutes from my hometown, and it's a great community and a place to raise a family, and it's a great school. And when it opened, I was actually like, oh man, I want to be at Jinx still. I've loved every bit of being at Jinx, but I felt it was one of those God things, and I felt that God was leading me to apply, and it was the values that I thought were important was the values that the administration at Fort Gibson has, expressed that they thought was important. And it was one of those that just fit hand in hand. And so I don't know if there's a major like flip, or not flip, but like a switch that I was like, oh yeah, now it's time. But I think it was just one of those that it was just God's timing.
I kind of you brought up the job that you would be interested in, and Fort Gibson being that job. As far as what would pry you away from Jinx, what would make you comfortable with leaving where you're at now? And that was going to kind of be my next question. As far as I got to think that it made that process, interviewing, going after a head coaching gig, knowing that it's close to home, an area of the state that you're very familiar with growing up in. I got to think that definitely played a large part in the decision to not only go after the job, but ultimately accept it.
Yes, sir. And, my family lives 20 minutes from Fort Gibson, and it allows my daughter to spend time with my parents and see them. And, one of the big pulls for me was the community of Fort Gibson itself and the school district. It's always been a great district. Everyone talks about it. And the thing that makes Jinx so special is how everybody has the same goal of making our players better men and better people. And, Coach Riggs says, he got from Coach Trimble, was if you make a better person, you're going to make a better football player. And when talking to the administration at Fort Gibson, I said that, and that's something that they say. And it was one of those that it was like, man, our ideas and values line up completely. And, for me, it's about building those relationships with the players and just feeding into their lives to help them, and that's the vision they had at Fort Gibson. And I just felt it was a perfect fit.
Now, our guest last week was Harry Wright, the new head coach of the Bartlesville Bruins. And one of the things that he and I discussed was how Bartlesville, they've had, some down times over the last few years, but they've also had success recently within the last decade. And, he and I were kind of, the same mindset that Bartlesville is a program that, could be a sleeping giant, the right person, the right, people in charge, that's a program that can really excel and compete year in and year out. I think that Fort Gibson is in that same dynamic. They have a history of success. They have a recent history of success as well. Yeah, the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been some down years, but at the same time, you mentioned the community. It's very supportive. Fort Gibson is a program that year in and year out could be one of those teams in 4A that is not only competing for district championships, but competing for playoff spots, home playoff games, and ultimately, going after that gold ball.
Yes, sir. So, that's definitely something that makes the job a lot more appealing, and I think the biggest thing is, again, it's just going in there and setting the culture of what I believe is, what I believe makes better people, and really trying to establish that culture. I know culture is that code word that everybody uses, or that buzzword that everybody uses, but I think it's about being intentional and building those relationships. And coming from Jinx, the amount of hard work that Jinx does is unbelievable and unlike any place I've ever been, as far as film work and the exercises they do with workouts and the coaching and so I'm trying to bring some of that to Fort Gibson and set that culture of work and team and just build better people. And I think that Fort Gibson's ready for it. I think they've done some great things. Obviously they've gone 6-5 the last couple of years, and there's talent there. And I'm excited to build up the youth program and just continue to feed into the players they have and establish kind of our vision of the program.
Another thing that goes along with it, when you're one of those teams year in and year out, and you've obviously known that after, spending the last several years at Jinx, is, being in a successful program, you have a target and there's a ton of competition around you. And in Class 4A, in my opinion, it's been one of the more competitive classes in Oklahoma. You have programs like Wagner, Poto, that are in that area that are some of the best in 4A football that now, you have to contend with year in and year out. You're in that district where, you have to worry about Broken Bow. Sallisaw has a first-year head coach, and the expectations are for that program to turn around. Hilldale has been on a really good run as of late. So, the job, while it could be a sleeping giant, there are a lot of things to like about it. At the same time, there's a lot of competition in Class 4A, especially on the east side of the state. But that is something that, being at Jinx, you're no stranger to.
Yes, sir. And then also being in 6A too, I had the most fun I've ever had as a coach in 6A too, because every week it was a dogfight. People, the last couple of years, Bixby's gone undefeated. But if you remember back when the split first happened, the first 4 years, Bixby would lose 3 or 4 games and go win the state championship.
Yeah.
Still with that, it's a dogfight every game. And I loved it because it was like you didn't have the teams where you could take off a week, not that you take off, but it was, you could go 10-0 or you could go 0-10, just depending on how you came out to play. And so, no, I'm excited. I've looked at the schedule, and that was something I said to my assistant coaches. I was like, man, you can go 10-0 or you can go 0-10, just depending on how you come out to play that week.
Yeah, I'm sure the reaction to that was, well, how about the first one? How about we go 10-0 and become one of those top teams in 4A year in and year out?
100%.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying 100%, that's the goal. And I love it because I love competition, man. I've always loved competition. I love competing. And, I've been going to the baseball games and watching. Something I loved, the quarterback, Cole Mahaney, was, they end up getting a big win to go to the state tournament. But, when it was tied 2-2, he had a runner on second and third. And so I got to see him kind of, compete with a little bit of pressure on him. And I looked at his dad, because his dad was right there next to me. And I was like, that right there is what I wanted to see. He came out and got the strikeout or ground out. I don't remember one of the two, but he got out of the inning. And it was like, I want to see how they performed under pressure. And you get a schedule like ours, it's pressure every week. And I love it. I'm excited to go to war with those dudes. So
now you are finishing up, as we mentioned at the start, your tenure at Jinx, and spring practice opening up this week as we publish this, and you are going to be able to while you're finishing up your teaching at Jinx, you are able to start spring drills with the Tigers. You were just hired, I think less than a month ago, or at least announced as the head coach. How much interaction have you had with your new players at the Fort?
Haven't been able to do a lot of interaction with the players because Jinx starts the school day so late. I don't get done teaching till 3:00, and they get to athletics at 1:30 at Fort Gibson. So I've tried to go down there to a lot of like baseball games and extracurriculars to meet the kids. I got to meet the team one day. But I've had a lot more interaction with the coaches than anything. We've been having a lot of meetings, setting the schedule and the install lists, and kind of the way that we're going to handle spring ball and what I deem important, and what my expectations for them are, and what they can also expect from me. And I'm a big family guy. My wife is huge into it. She's unbelievable coach's wife, and so just going down talking to the coaches about I want their families involved, and I want them to be up there and be a part of it. And so kind of letting them understand what my vision of the program is. I've definitely missed the kids. That's something I've really wanted. And that's been probably the most frustrating situations, not being able to spend time with them. And, my first couple relationship building is going to be on day one of practice, and so I wish I got a little more time that way, but if that's the worst thing that happens, I'm doing all right. So, I'm definitely excited to spend some time with the kids.
Well, one thing, I can go ahead and go out on a limb and guess that probably each kid is going to have the tape across the front of their helmet with the name, because, it's just going to help you out. So whoever, is a tape distributor in the Fort Gibson area, my guy might need some help for some helmets this spring and going
Yes,
into the summer. I've always been interested. I've always been interested, Coach. When it's spring ball. Spring practice is so important. We learned that a couple of years ago with the COVID pandemic, when there was no spring practices, no team camps, anything like that. We learned just how important it was. And you get into the summer, you get into the fall, and because you didn't have it, you feel like you're behind. But at the same time, you just took over this job. You mentioned, some of the hurdles that you're having to overcome. I'm always intrigued by the coaches who, are hired at this time of the year. I feel even greatly for the coaches who are going to be hired, in the next couple of months. They didn't even have spring drills. How do you approach a spring and try to get, to start that culture, as you mentioned, start building that culture, knowing that, you just literally got the job a few weeks ago.
Right. So, I think for me and most coaches I've been around, relationships are the most important, right? And everything starts from relationships, the culture and the trust. You have to gain trust from the players. And it's the old teaching, quote that they say, they don't care what you know until they know you care. And so the one thing that I expressed to them in my first team meeting was, guys, I need a year of blind trust. Obviously I'm not there with you right now. I'm not able to be here, but give me a year of blind trust. And so for spring ball, it's that I hope, trust in what we're doing here, trust in the changes that'll be made. And it's really just being intentional and being consistent with who we are and showing the kids who we are and that we care about them. And, I'm going to coach you hard. That's my background. I'm going to coach you hard. I'm fiery, but at the same time, I'm going to love you more. And I'm always going to have your back. And so they're going to have to experience that practice one, since I haven't been able to spend a couple months with them. But at the same time, it's understanding what it's trying to learn the kids on the fly of, some kids need loved up a little more. Others need, a little harder coaching. It just depends on their personality and what they react to. So it'll be a learning process for all of us in spring, but more than anything, I want them to see that I care about them. I want to see that our coaches care about them. And like I said, give me that blind trust, have some buy-in early and get it to pay off.
What do the as I mentioned, as we publish this, spring practice has opened up. A lot of team camps going on at the end of this week, start of next week, and into early June. Then, of course, passing leagues in June have become very popular, along with several 7-on-7 tournaments for the schools during the summer. What's something that you want to learn from your ball club as you get to know them, as they get to know you? But, what's something that you want established, over the next couple of weeks as you head into the summer months, as you head into summer workouts, and then eventually, fall. I mean, August is going to be here. We say this every single year. August is going to be here before we know it. What's something that you want to see from your team over the next couple of weeks?
There's a couple things. I had a list that I just met with the coaches last night in our staff meeting. But, the first one is I want to establish an identity of who we are. We are a tough physical football team that gives max effort and we play for each other. So I want to establish a team identity, but also want to establish an offensive and defensive identity. Offensively, we're going to be an up-tempo, A gap run team that takes play action shots and have deep choice routes. We're going to throw RPOs. We're going to be a fully attacking, aggressive offense. And on defense, we're going to be a tough, physical, fly the football team that we're going to be, again, attacking defense. And we're going to try and get takeaways. And that's who we are. And, so it's establishing that identity of who we are. And I think one is something, I think you need to have it in writing. And I think it's something you need to talk about every day with your players so they understand this is the expectation, this is the goal, and this is what we're working to become. So for me, it's just becoming that tough physical football team that every time you play the Fort Gibson Tigers, that they're going to come out and hit you in the mouth, and every time we show up, that's what you're going to get, no matter the talent level that we have that year, no matter, whether we have a 5-star or we have kids that aren't getting recruited, that we're going to play as hard as we can play. And so for me, it's establishing that culture and establishing that identity that's my goal for the spring and summer. And so that way, when we get into the fall, that's already far.
You mentioned, some of your expectations as far as what the offense is going to look like, what the defense is going to look like. When you look at this fall, and we mentioned how tough the schedule is, and Class 4A over the last several years has been very competitive in a tough district once again. But as you mentioned, Fort Gibson coming off a playoff appearance last season, it's a very tough district. But at the same time, when you think about this fall, and for any of the Fort Gibson fans that might be watching right now, what do you want to say to them as far as the brand of football that the Tigers will be playing this fall, and what your expectations are? What would those be?
That's a great question. I don't want to talk wins and losses, but what I want to know, what I want them to know is that it's going to be an exciting time. We're going to work harder than they've ever worked, and we're going to, we're bringing some pretty high level schemes in, and we're going to give our kids the best chance to succeed, and we're going to be a team that the community can be proud of, and a team that's in the community. And I just can't wait to coach their kids and get down there and build relationships with them. And the hope is you get better every single week, and I think that's something that Jinx has done great. Is you see every week Jinx gets better, and so that's what we're going to bring. Is every week our goal is to be better than we were the last week. And so I think that if you do and control what you can control, the winning takes care of itself. And so we're going to maximize our abilities and put our kids in the best situation.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations on being named the head coach of the Fort Gibson Tigers, returning as close to home as you possibly can get. Really looking forward to seeing what you can do with that program. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Coach's Corner.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you're doing for high school football. It really is awesome, and I know it means more to the kids than you'll ever know. And so thank you.
Thank you. That's Ryan Nolan, the new head coach of the Fort Gibson Tigers. And coming up next week, we go over to the west side of the state, where another coach was literally just named head coach as we record this, I think less than 10 days ago. Coleman Ramsey, the new head coach at McLeod, longtime assistant over in the OKC area. He'll be joining us next week on the Coach's Corner. So if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate that. We appreciate you tuning in to the Harry Wright interview, new head coach at Bartlesville last week, as well as the beginning of this series, Greg Bryant, the new head coach over at Moore, at the beginning of May. So for Coach Nolan, I'm Michael Knight, and this has been another edition of the Prep Red Zone Coach's Corner.